Thank you. Extremely excited and extremely honored to be moderating these guys. First of all, who wouldn't love a job where you have to moderate a panel where people ask questions? We don't even have topics. So it's an extremely good gig. My name is Jeet Niyogi. I'm the marketing director for Playtika Canada, and we develop, publish, and market Wonders of Poker from Montreal, Canada, which is under me. But Playtika, as you probably know, has a few hits in the social casino, Slotomania, Bingo, and also hyper-casual, casual games. So very glad to have the panel. So before I introduce the panel, I will let the panel introduce themselves. There are some very simple rules of the games. Give as much insights you can, guys. Examples, numbers will help validate your answers. Make it a little controversial, it's quite okay to say playable is out. It's not, as long as you back it up with some data and stats, and it's quite good, so you can say things like that. Let's make it fun. This is the last, we are between the drinks and knowledge. So, let's make it fun, interesting, and without further ado, why don't you introduce yourself, Deniz?
Hi guys, my name is Deniz Gezgin. I've been in mobile gaming for about 12 years. Worked at companies like Machine Zone, Zynga, and FunPlus in different roles across anything non-engineering. So I was general manager at Tops, head of performance marketing and growth at Idle Games, ran P&Ls in different sizes, set up offices for FunPlus in US. So anything from operations to performance marketing to managing P&Ls, you can ask me questions about. And also I'm heavily product savvy on designing mobile strategy games or gamification features. So if there are game designers out there and would like to ask interesting questions, check the answer.
Hey, I'm Connelly. I am co-founder and I head marketing for TMG US at the Meet Group. And our apps are Meet Me, Tag, Scout, and Woohoo. We're a portfolio of mobile dating apps. And yeah, so we've been doing that since 2005 was when we launched, and we've had our app since 2010.
Cool, so my name is Hawley. I'm the co-founder and COO of FeedMob. We are tasked with the very fun problem and challenge of making sense of everything outside of the duopoly. So we're integrated with somewhere around 150 to now 200 different ad networks, DSPs, SDK ad networks. And what we really aim to do is just help our clients grow with confidence. And we do that simply by automating a lot of their day-to-day tasks, aggregating a lot of the work that they have to do in-house, and of course, and most importantly, we do have our own fraud prevention tech.
Great.
Hey everyone, I'm Karla Fornall. I'm the Director of Growth Marketing for Credit Karma. I've been there for about 4 months now, and prior to that I was Director of Growth at Pandora for about 2 years, and before that was at Dictionary.com and worked there for 5 years heading up marketing and taking that kind of iconic desktop brand mobile, launching over 16 mobile apps, including language learning and thesaurus.com apps, etc. I hail from a long line of experience of in-app engagement, partnering with product teams, engineering teams, and also growth marketers to drive engagement and revenue.
Great, great. As you can see, we have a great diverse mix, all industries, gaming, dating, performance optimizer. Who doesn't know Credit Karma? She has all our data. I know.
So be nice.
I know, exactly. So let me start by set the ground rolling with a question. I like to stand. Sorry if you are not intimidated. That's okay. All good. I like to stand and get a casual conversation going. So let me first ask about. Let's give us some of the nitty-gritties. What kind of data analysis, data modeling is going on? Can you share like the infrastructure, the team? What are you testing, and how is it helping you acquire high-quality users? Let's get some of the nitty-gritties around that. Not just that we have a system and we are using this IRTV.
Yeah, we test a lot of things around monetization or repurchase rates. So we test a lot of things around retention, D1 retention, D7 retention, D30 retention. And anything that affects LTV, we test around it, right? So the LTV formula is a very, very basic, time over monetization. Right? So time equals retention, and we do a lot of things. You want to see what people are purchasing, and can we make them purchase again? We do a lot of things around resource fluctuation, and maybe a bit too specific into game design, but we find throughout years of experience that when people either lose or win things, they are more likely to do an action of either a purchase or come back, or get really pissed off and attack a person again. So this is more of a strategy game design, but yeah, we test a lot of things.
How about the dating apps? How are you competing against, and how are you building it?
Yeah, so obviously we care a lot about retention too, and when we our revenue actually is majority advertising up until basically last year, where it became user pay. Now we're actually looking into better segmenting our users to figure out, okay, well, we can monetize, a larger base of our users, but at a lower rate with advertising. But now we have a lot of users making in-app purchases, and so really figuring out what's driving the purchases. Specifically, we have whale activity, which is not typical for a dating app. Because of live streaming, we have people that will buy and spend hundreds of dollars sending virtual gifts. And we're really figuring out what's trying to drive those whales, and what keeps them engaged is important to us. And so we're looking a lot about, lots of A/B testing in general, how to data team.
How do you define whales?
So we defined it in a few ways. If you're spending over $200 a day, you're pretty
You're definitely
low.
away.
So what's your primary source of catching those whales?
So actually luckily, a lot of our users the bulk of our users still come in from organic sources. Though we have a great talent team that actually goes out and searches for these whales, basically. And these streamers is another aspect of it. So basically we have three segments. There's a normal user, the whales, and then there's also the streamers. And to get them, it's actually a lot of more personal connection, and getting a lot of people that know people, and actually trying to get them to spread the word about us, because the strongest way to get someone to the apps is word of mouth. It's if they've heard of you, if they've heard good things, and that matters. That matters the most. And then obviously within our user acquisition engine, we have a lot of money going into that, downstream events, and figuring out the events that actually matter and that actually turn into retention and that turn into purchases, and doing broadcasts.
Great. Sarah, how does one measure word of mouth?
There's another one. Cool. What were you saying, Jeet?
I was just saying, you're a performance optimizer, you're in the industry. How does one measure word of mouth? How can we relate that data to gain more users, network?
So I think that we naturally see word of mouth just based on our conversion rates. So because we work with so many different clients throughout the space, because we work with a lot of the clients that are some of the top 3 apps, for example, right? We notice word of mouth very easily, either in a very positive way or in a very negative way, where conversion rates will drop suddenly and we won't be able to buy in the same placements that we used to be able to buy. So I think that what you see with positive word of mouth is that it just inflates your conversion rates. We've seen instances where when you're getting a lot of positive word of mouth, you can get 2 to 3x your conversion rate, and then suddenly you're able to afford higher and higher waterfall placements across maybe a lot of the DSP channels.
Okay, good. And anything on your side that you want to add to the data modeling and analysis that goes on to find the high quality users?
Well, I think, obviously lifetime value modeling is really critical, and being able to look at, return rates of certain specific cohorts and lookalike models, which is nothing new, but, I think it's really important to really understand over a long trajectory, what is that value and return rate of that specific cohort. Not looking at the top line, digging into the data, clicking down into painful cohorts and understanding, is it seasonality? Is it a specific traffic channel? Is it a specific creative or iteration or version? I mean, what is that thing that is driving that high quality traffic? And just really being painfully tactical about it, I think, can yield a lot of results. There's no silver top line bullet, unfortunately.
What percent of your budget goes to retargeting, if I may ask?
To what?
Retargeting. versus new user acquisition? What percent roughly?
Yeah, having only been at Credit Karma for 4 months, probably not too at liberty to say, but I can say that my experience at Pandora was very interesting because when I started there 2.5 years ago, a majority of that was a lot of the budget was being targeted towards recapture and retargeting, basically, and saying, okay, well, we've tapped out on new member acquisition because we have X million number of records and there's only so many people left in the United States, and then therefore there's no acquisition opportunity. That's a fallacy. Obviously, you need to make sure that you are absolutely keeping a really healthy top of funnel and having, a good, if not 50-50, 75-25 mix of top of funnel, with the retargeting being more like the 25%, lower funnel, and then nurturing that top of funnel even more.
One last thing on retargeting, then I'll throw it to you. I mean, all of us here, most of us have a huge issue about measuring the incrementality from retargeting, right? We all know that. We have some, growth in organic baseline, growth in DAO, and all that kind of things, which are not scientific to the best of my knowledge. I mean, there's some directional help, but who here spends a lot of money on retargeting? You don't have to give percents, but and how do you measure the incremental benefit or efficiency from retargeting? What kind of methodologies do you have in place? If you can share for the audience, that would be great.
I mean, on the days that when we used to spend money on retargeting, we actually did a lot of retargeting around our payers. So you could actually see ROI and calculate ROI much easier if you bring payers back into the app, and if they do
payers back how many days later? 0 to 7, 7 to 30?
It depends on. So we have basically triggers that depends on their last purchase, and also I mentioned fluctuation of their balance, because over the years we tested so many hypotheses that we realized when a user gets very close to zero, and you got to test different points, but very close to zero, and if that user has been around for a long time and a monetized person, they are most likely to make a purchase, or much higher likely to make a purchase if you find the price point and the offering. So we do a lot of tests in that, and yeah, but we've done a lot of. We don't really do that much retargeting on our free users. So if you come into our app, and that's obviously some of the games that I ran. If you come into our app and if you're a free user, we would like you to, obviously continue playing, but we would like to actually bring back the players. So
great. Anyone want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, so it's something that's always interesting. We don't have like we'll do tests here and there, but I tend to think that with retargeting, you want to kind of what you were saying. Both of our users are free users, and if they, depending where we lost them in the churn, maybe the app just isn't for them. And so that I think is sometimes the case. You don't want to always just assume, throw money at this user that already showed that they weren't really that interested in the app to begin with. We really want to be targeting those people that stay. We want to be targeting those people that are in that long tail that come back day 90, day 120. Have some users that are coming back, 6 years later, and still good users. We want users like that.
Great. So let's have some questions from the audience. Who's going first? We're going to move the mic around. Or we have Slido, sli.do, and you can just type in your questions, and I can read it out, or you can read it out.
Actually, we do have some questions on Slido here, probably because it's an AMA. The first question is, what types of brands or apps work best for DSPs, and who gets the most out of them, and why?
What type of apps?
Yes.
What types of brands or apps?
Yeah, so go Sarah.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there. So I actually came from my industry experience started at one of the first mobile DSPs, M.M, who holds a very special place in my heart still. And what I think is very interesting about DSPs is it's a true, almost laissez-faire economy, as long as you're not in a situation where any of the SSP world is being tainted by mobile ad fraud, right? And so I actually think that you can make most apps and games work on a DSP. It's just all about like, where does equilibrium lie? Like, where does supply meet demand, right? And does it make sense for the advertiser? So what we've seen in the past is like, we'll have maybe a utility app where they can only really hit substantial scale on a DSP at like a $6 CPI, and maybe they don't monetize that well, and so they can't buy at scale on DSPs, but I think what's very interesting is there is a lot of untapped potential that comes out of the DSPs that I do feel that clients should really be taking advantage of if they can.
Great.
Okay, we do have one more question.
Sure.
Please keep them coming, because these are great questions. Will 2019 be the year networks die out unless they own their own inventory as companies build in-house programmatic teams to try and tame ad fraud?
Great question. So it's about ad fraud, in-house, out-house. What do you think? What do you predict for 2019? How's it?
I think the question is if they are gonna die out, right?
Yeah.
The networks are gonna die out?
Yeah.
I don't believe they will, but.
No, I don't think that. I think what is being asked is, with all the effort that's going on, either inside the company or by companies outside, do you think that fraud as a mechanism will stop, or the networks will?
Yeah, I don't believe fraud will ever stop. So, you know, you get smarter and fraudsters get smarter, right?
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
It'll be a never-ending war.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I think a good twist is, what are you guys doing to, do you have operations internally, or you're relying on a third party, or just the mobile tracking partners? What do you guys do?
Yeah, I mean, we rely mostly on the attribution partner. I mean, we work with Coachella, and they've been great in terms of identifying fraud. But other attribution partners do a good job as well. We also have a couple of personal contacts that actually looks at a couple of real-time bidding walls, whether it's click fraud walls that can give us some heads up. And yeah, there are different ways to get ahead of them. Yeah.
Yes, we use Adjust, and they have a good fraud suite, but additionally to that, we have a lot of internal data that shows, basically, can you believe what the, basically what the MMP is showing? Can you, says this many registrations, do we actually see them internally? So we basically track everything internally, but we also see it in our partners, so we can actually see if there's really a difference and dive in there. Additionally, our German team in Lagu, they built an internal ad fraud tool that we're working on.
Sarah, you're dying to go.
I'm dying to talk about this. We work with like 150 different ad networks, and I don't think they're going anywhere. But I think that what happens is exactly what Deniz was saying, is it's this push and pull where it's almost like whack-a-mole. You find one type of fraud that you build product against, and then all of a sudden something new pops up and it hits you all of a sudden, and you're left being what just happened, right? We had a crazy experience with one of our more senior account managers where we saw that we really were doubling down on this one site ID because it had very consistent return on ad spend. We were seeing, okay, we were buying this and it had 7% D3 return on ad spend. And then we kept seeing it age out, and we just kept seeing it age out. And then all of a sudden we got to day 14 and we saw no aging out from day 15, and we saw no aging out from day 30. And what we saw was this was actually a fraudster was utilizing bots, and they were making real in-app purchases, and they were just arbitraging that in order to still make a margin. And it was crazy. We ended up, luckily we were able to recuperate the money back for the advertiser, but it was one of the most wild situations I've seen in 2018, and I think that that's just going to keep on happening. And so, I think ultimately what we really need to do as clients of this industry, or as people who want to better the ecosystem, is we just have to really be on top of our data. We have to be looking at everything, retention, every single post-install metric we can possibly look at. And Kat and her team are really great at actually looking at their internal numbers, which I think has saved them from a lot of headaches down the road. So I think all of us in this room have a lot of responsibility in order to fight the good fight.
Of course.
Yeah, and then for your, just a plus one, everything that Kat is saying there, if you look at your return rates and your incrementality frameworks against your retention segments for the past year, so not just your lifetime value and mapping that to your allowable, but actually like last year's return rates on your cohorts, that can kind of knock some of that stuff on the head, because you're right, I mean, that is a crazy story.
It was a tough month.
Yeah. So, you just, let your data age for a year and then base your incrementality and allowables based on past year's performance and channel mix.
As much as it's on the networks as well, it is also on the marketer side. We know where you can see it. I mean, don't just blame the others. I mean, you can see what's coming in. Look at your data on a very regular basis. And you have so many indicators now provided by your MMPs. I know a couple of you mentioned. And set alerts. I mean, you can find it very easily, and then just don't do business or claim back the money. So any more questions around fraud or anything else that you guys want to talk about?
We have two more here in the
Oh,
app,
great.
actually. So the next one is, for a small mobile growth team with a tight budget, which growth tactic do you recommend we invest in the most? Acquisition or retention, ASO versus in-app and push?
Like the percent distribution if someone had $10,000, let's say. Let's say 100,000, make it 100,000.
Yeah,
Which percent would you allocate to where and whatnot?
I personally would choose retention and in-app and push versus ASO and someone that gets the UA partner on board.
Yeah, I know we're supposed to be fighting and disagreeing, but I'm with you on that. I think that that's basically the foundations of the app, and you want to make sure that once you do start, once those users keep coming back, you're going to have more budget to work with in the future. And if you put the work in, the foundation in to have users that come back and that have a very good push strategy, it can take you a long way. And with ASO, I mean, we do have, we do a larger ad spend, but we still see more users coming in because of because they're finding us in the app stores organically, and that's you can't discount the power that the app store has.
I think that we just keep agreeing with each other because of the group of the group that's up here, but I agree with you 100%. One thing I will say is I think that there's a lot of pressure to diversify outside of Google and Facebook, even when you're small. And I would say hold off. Like, double down on Google and Facebook, make them work, and don't diversify out until you start proving out that the app is really working and you start getting more and more incremental budget to your team. Just because it's not worth the risk right off the bat. And once you figure out Google and Facebook, then you at least have a stable portfolio ahead of you.
Yeah, plus one to that, Kat. And also, just in terms of engagement, because I've done a lot of engagement growth, and I think that, your organic mix, if you have a good organic mix, and you have a healthy business, figuring out what those engagement levers are so that you can drive your downstream monetization is ultimately going to be able to prove out which of your cohorts and audiences are the most valuable to increase your allowables in the long term. So absolutely 100% focus on retention and engagement first with top of funnel second. Otherwise you're just shoveling coal, if you will.
Great.
Okay.
There's one more question.
We've got a few more. People are asking some really great ones here. Next one is, what are your top mobile growth KPIs, and which KPIs are you tracking throughout the year?
This is going to be a very generic answer, but I like DAU, MAU, I personally do a lot of monetization analysis. I like repurchase rates. Not first purchase, but distance or time from first purchase. And also, I mentioned I'm, kind of like geeking out on fluctuation of currency or fluctuation of resources because, I've been heavily involved with several big strategy games and also casino games at Zynga and Machine Zone. So I like whenever there's a better increase or a decrease and what happens to user behavior. So the next session, session after fluctuation. But maybe it's too deep, but yeah.
Yeah, so besides DAU and retention, so we track specific KPIs for each of our apps that drive things that we care about. So we care about meaningful connections, and we care a lot about chats. So we track the number of chats sent per day. That's a very important indicator to the health of the audience, because the number one way for a user to be re-engaged is to receive a message from another user. And so that's a very important aspect. And then also people who respond, so a number of conversations where it goes like, someone sent a chat, that person responded, so we track that. And then also subscription renewal rates and new subscriptions for Lavu, which is from our portfolio, the more subscription-based app.
Just a quick sub-question on that. So now you're tracking some of the very good things, but are you using it to target such users who have greater, some unique events that you're sending to your targeting feature?
So we do track a lot of things internally to see who the good users are. A lot of them, we're still ramping up campaigns that are going, further down the funnel for the events that matter to us. And one of them is video daily active users, and so that's one of the ones that we, have started some test campaigns on to see. Okay, well, this is an event we really care about, driving people specifically to this part of the app.
Great. Anything else you want to go ahead?
Sure, yeah, so at Pandora, we tracked all downstream, so incremental listeners and incremental hours listened by every channel, and different types of creative and content forms, depending on the cohort and channel, would deliver more hours or more listeners. It really was creative contingent, but always measuring downstream events in terms of performance. For the top line, because they were publicly traded, obviously MAU, and it's all laddering up into MAU, but that downstream actual event that mapped to the MAU numbers is kind of how we monitor performance marketing. At Credit Karma, it's we have a kind of a verticalized model. So we've got a free tax service. We have obviously free credit scores. We've got a auto hub and a number of different things. So all media running against that is also tracked to that down funnel, what we call meaningful action, which is did you optimizing against an e-file, or optimizing against connecting your car, or in the case of the free credit score, how many times per month are you coming to check your credit score? I would say for new developers out there who are trying to figure out, how do I figure out what my meaningful action is? It really starts with the basic of are you a weekly, monthly, or quarterly product, and really not looking at just optimizing or monetizing your most high valuable audience, but taking that step to understand who is your persona in your audience and how do they interact with your app, and then understanding is it WAU, DAU, MAU, and from there understanding your meaningful actions.
Great. So it's safe to assume you're also building some lookalike audiences based on these actions, and then targeting, retargeting.
Yeah.
Very good. Cool. Next.
So a retention and churn question. What's the latest reactivation period that you've seen successfully re-engage?
Sorry, what does that mean? Who is the person who asked it? Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, what's the oldest cohort of churned users, 120 days ago is the last time they used the app, or 360 days ago, that you've seen successfully re-engage, or it was a successful campaign?
Yeah, so it depends on the apps it depends on what type of user it is. If it's a free user, it's much harder to reactivate them. But if it's a paid user, there are things that you can do to activate them. One being the most aggressive thing, giving them X amount of dollars for free, right? So we've done tests around, Zynga Poker or Game of War. We've seen a lot of success for paid users to come back, even though it was, let's say, 40 days, 50 days. Because usually what happens when a user leaves a game, they get pissed off at you. Whether they lose a lot of chips on a poker table, or somebody comes at 5 levels higher than them and trashes their village. So we could actually do a lot of smart retargeting for those type of users. We can identify them looking at data. Hey, what happened to this user? Last 5 actions. What is the last 5 or last 10 events they fired before they churned? And we can kind of segment those users and say, okay, I'm going to test something with these guys, starting with a very simple push notif or an email, and then getting aggressive. And we saw that payers react very good, actually, to those type of aggressive retargeting.
One thing I can add to that, because this is a struggle for all of us here, all of us in the room, but this is no secret that recency is a huge factor. So 0 to 7, 0 to 3, even, works very good. Pairs versus non-pairs, again, not a brainer. Amount of transaction versus lower transactions. But again, it's tiered approach. It depends on which app you are. Gaming works like this, but the other apps might work a little different. But it's a struggle, but absolutely no doubt that the bulk should go around in the recency, because when people have left along far, even if they were big pairs and whatnot, it's very hard to get them back, even with the best retargeting channels. And another thing is syncing up the whole thing. Like, if you're doing Facebook ads for retargeting, the emails should go around the same, and then the push notes. So it's the combined sort of strategy of getting back the people. And you can put a promo code to retain something, and all of them should have the same sort of language, messaging, synergy to bring them back.
Yeah, and one thing to add, so most of the apps that I've been involved with, and most of your retargeting, if you're going to be successful, it will happen within the 35 to 50 days. So if somebody churn past those days, it'll be exponentially harder for you to bring them back. So.
And I just want to jump in I think that this is really targeted towards gaming, which is great. And I think gaming, you can really re-engage people who have churned out over the course of years. I'll re-engage with Words with friends even maybe tomorrow, because I'm just interested, right? But I think what's really important is for the non-gaming advertisers in this room, I think that when you're trying to re-engage churned out cohorts, you should play to your unfair advantage, right? A lot of non-gaming are very seasonal, or maybe for a social network, if there's an election going on, you should then go and try to go after your cohorts, right? And I think it's harder for non-gaming advertisers in general, because most of the supply out there is casual gaming, and so they already are up against kind of insurmountable odds. And so I think that what non-gaming advertisers really need to be concerned with is what is your unfair advantage? If you're Credit Karma, maybe it's tax season, right? If you're the meat group, maybe there's something interesting going on in the dating world, right? So yeah, that's what I always tell our clients.
Catherine, how are you even here? Today must be the busiest day for your app.
I'm sorry.
How are you even here? Today must be the busiest day for your app.
Trying to get a Valentine's date.
Yeah.
Actually, we do see a good uptick right after New Year's. It's a good dating time.
Okay.
The holidays end, you don't have to buy someone a present anymore, so it's kind of a nice
A
time.
lot of people break it off on
Cuffing
New Year's,
season.
and then they're looking for dates.
You must have certainly seasonality. There must be a month which is high on breakups and then
I mean,
takeoffs.
What's the biggest breakup one?
So it turns out, obviously, I wouldn't say it's a very clear seasonality. We do notice that, January happens to be a good time. Part of that is because December is just, very expensive. It's just not. But we do see with our users, though, and that does matter, obviously, for engagement. It's sometimes they didn't leave because they had, a bad experience with the app and they forgot about it. They're just now in a relationship. And that's part of, actually why we created the live streaming platform, so that even there's a platonic use case now, and trying to push people to use more aspects of the app, so that it's not just a transactional dating thing where you leave once you found what you were looking for and you can find more.
Nice. Very good. Another question?
Yeah, so what are the most surprising drivers of performance you've seen this year?
What is the most
Surprising driver of performance that you've
surprising driver of performance this year? Was that right?
Yeah.
I didn't see anything surprising. Sorry.
It was all as
Maybe I'm
expected.
lost here, but
So in December 2017, what you thought, and now December 2018 was pretty even keel.
Influencer, playable ads, video ads.
My closer.
Influencers, playable ads, video ads. We were talking about those last year, so in my opinion, they're not really surprising. We've spent a lot of money on influencers, and
How is it working out?
it's great. Yeah, it worked out great at Tops. I think we've spent quite a lot and drove close to upwards of 2 million installs in a year. So
US everywhere.
and global for one of our apps.
ROAS is backing out. Return on ad spend is backing out. Retention.
Yeah,
is
if it
increasing.
wasn't, we wouldn't be doing it. Yeah.
Great.
I'm with you. I wasn't surprised last year. I'm hoping to be surprised this year.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
What is going to surprise? I mean, that's a good segue before you go to the next question. What is going to surprise us, or what are some of your things that we should be aware of in 2019? Maybe you can start. You've been.
Yeah, sure. So one thing that I'm really excited to start testing out, and I've been hearing about from our mass media team at Credit Karma, as you guys may or may not have seen, we run a lot of television, and so mass media historically is really hard to measure, in terms of recapture or retention, and what that does to kind of the middle of the funnel. When you have the top of the funnel, obviously you can measure mass very effectively in terms of new member acquisition, searches, and so on and so forth. But there's certain models of Vizio TVs that are, Sony TVs, the Vizio TVs that can send signals back to platform, and so we're going to be able to measure kind of for the first time what mass media is doing in terms of recapture, and I think that's going to be really, really interesting.
Oh, that's like groundbreaking.
Yeah, it's cool.
So I think in terms of what's going to come up this year and what I've started to see from last year is, I think that the mobile space is really ripe for consolidation right now. Like, I think that we're kind of done with the space of there being like 2,000 different ad networks. Like, I don't think the ad networks are going to die by any means, but I think that in this space, the biggest thing that's missing is trust. I think that marketers are screaming to have a trusted partner, and they're screaming to work with just a small group or a small subset of trusted partners. And so I think that what we're going to see coming up this year is that mobile marketers are really going to cement, like, who are my trusted partners? Who am I going to go with for the rest of this year? And I think that we're going to see that, like, there's going to be less and less names out there for potential to work with.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes. So maybe one more question or two, if you can give a quick answer. You have something?
So with the discovery of more and more driven by spend, how does the game space avoid becoming Hollywood? Is it a play-to-win world ruled by imitation artists and risk aversion?
I'm sorry, what? So is the person here who's actually? I'm sorry.
Just provide the microphone to the person there.
Yeah.
Someone raised their hands, right? Or no? Or you can just read it again. Oh, you're the one who asked the question? Or? No.
No.
Okay.
Could we read it?
Sure. With discovery more and more driven by spend, how does the game space avoid becoming Hollywood with a pay-to-win world ruled by imitation artists and risk aversion?
Okay.
Interesting question. You want to take that?
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, in gaming world, I think there's a huge drive for this IP-driven game releases. So I don't know if this answers the question, but I predict that it's going to continue happening, and I think maybe it's not really the real answer of what's going on with the increasing CPAs or CPIs. You can't anymore be a small game developer, in my opinion, and launch an app and it becomes extremely successful before you run out of money. And for that reason, it'll be, I think, tougher and tougher, and bigger guys at the moment will get much bigger, or they will protect their market share. And I see that trend continuing.
Yeah, I mean, over the course of history, not just with gaming, but with any product or any industry, what we have seen is that you need to spend marketing dollars to gain more revenue dollars. The difference today is, or the space we live in now, is that it's way more measurable and actionable than it was before. So we have to keep creating good products. That there is but that's not enough. That's not enough. We have to be in front of the audience, and especially in our world, there's a lot of distraction. It's a very crowded space. So how do we get ahead and be noticed? And which needs a combination. Obviously, there's the paid media strategy, but obviously then you will have to do everything else to support that paid media strategy to grow organically. Word of mouth, which is a very, very important name of the game in this world, is if you have a great product, that once you have A and B, the paid strategy and the organic strategy, the word of mouth is bound to take you to places. But it's a combination. It's an orchestra. You can't just do one thing or expect to not do anything but have a great product. It's a combination. In early days, you might just, and with data, as I said, I mean, everything is quite measurable in our world today. It's not the days of Mad Men or putting posters in billboard and then just calculating like so many eyeballs pass through the street or highway, and then so this is our word is spreading. It is very, performance marketing is super measurable. We are far away from those days of who said the famous marketing quote, right? Half of my money is wasted in marketing. I just don't know which half. So we know which half now.
Okay, and I think we're out of time. Thank you very much, Jeet. Thanks our panelists, and thanks everybody for your wonderful questions.